Lynn, thank you so much for joining me. And as always, you're beautiful and colourful.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Good to be here.
And in your honour, anybody who's watching on video will see that I'm actually more colourful than usual because I didn't want to be outdone. I'm quite competitive, really. So anyway, let's get right to it, and let's start with your great business successes. You were hugely successful running one of the best PR agencies in London. Looking at that wonderful experience, what would you say were your biggest successes, or you're most proud of?
Um, well, really, PR didn't exist in the form that I took it to. It is said by many. And we created some amazing initiatives rather than just promote our clients, which of course we did and got tremendous amount of coverage and awareness of them and their projects. We also were very, very creative. And so the creation of London Fashion Week was a big one for me, and the British Fashion Awards, which has gone on to become a global event. So all that is very good. And I'm also very proud of the work that we did with our not-for-profit side when we promoted environmental awareness. I created Fashion Cares, which it was the biggest and is still the biggest fund raiser for HIV/AIDS, which MAC Cosmetics took over. We launched Green Consumer Week at a time when people were really not thinking about personal responsibility to what we can do for the environment. And a lot of the work that we did with individual creative people, I'm very proud of. But once I sold the business, which was at the end of the 80s, early 90s, I then created a lot of other projects, which I'm also very, very proud of, and became an advisor on environment and women's engagement to many of the big corporates. So I'm proud of the work I did with McDonalds, with their Women's Leadership Network, with Tesco's with women's engagement. And of course, the big event I put on, What Women Want, which was the first women's festival in the UK at the South Bank, which was in 95. And that was the first time really there'd been a public conversation about women and the internet and women as consumers, women as artists. And it was a huge success. So, and was a precursor to many other events like Wow and others that have taken place since.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, for most people, that's enough for a lifetime of work, and
Yeah.
yet you've done so much more since. I mean, you in the introduction, I said that you were very good at predicting trends and even creating trends. Do you think that skill helped you with your business then and now?
Yes, I think it has without question, because I was able to tell my clients and still can tell my clients what lifestyle changes are coming, what trends are coming. I'm a bit like a sort of jigsaw puzzle putter together. I take all the information that's out there, I read everything, I see everything, I listen, and then I use my intuition. And the only thing I will say sometimes is I'm almost going to be too early, except that the world seems to have caught up now. So I created women's business clubs with Regus in partnership with Regus B.Hive, I think 10 years ago now, which were the first women's business clubs anywhere. Now there are a lot. And there have been other things that I've done over the years that perhaps have been a year or two before their time, but have caught up. I think it's really important as a comms specialist, as somebody who can work with business strategy and advise on what is coming next and how to create trust and relationship with your stakeholders, that the advisor, and certainly in my case, can understand the shifts that's constantly going on. And of course, we've never had a bigger shift than what's going on right now. So it's extremely important to understand what people are feeling, what the average woman and man and indeed young person and child is going to be wanting out of their lives, and out of the companies they're buying from and out of the companies they're working for. And it's very, very important. And I've seen with great pleasure, actually, how the various aspects I predicted, such as young, smart people wanting to work for companies that reflected their values, how women would want to have more freedom in how they worked, and indeed men, which worked around their families and a more integration of their work-life balance. I was working with government bodies on work-life balance before people even knew the phrase work-life balance. And of course, that's become more and more important, especially now.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you don't describe yourself as a futurist, though, do you? Even though you are really predicting and creating it.
Yeah.
What is that because you don't what, in fact, how would you define a futurist?
Well, interesting question. What was a futurist and how I would define it and how I define myself, because I did write a book in '94 which said absolutely now a futurist journey to her inner truth. I did think of things in terms of being a futurist. Now the future has caught up with us and we're in the present. And in fact, you and I made a joke the other day. It's always so being like a presentist. I mean, it's about being in the now. So looking ahead, we don't have the luxury these days of saying, well, what's going to happen in 10 years and 20 years? It's about what is happening right now, because the future is here. Whether it's technology, whether it's with AI, whether it's with what's going on in politics, in education, in agriculture, the future is right now. So I think it's being very grounded and real about what's happening in the world right now.
And absolutely, at the time of recording, I mean, we're in our third lockdown in the UK, and it does make you focus on the moment, on the now. It has made us all reevaluate and stand still a little bit. And maybe that's not a bad thing. But tell me, you touched on this just previously in the last answer about the importance of being able to talk about the trends with your clients. And you help them clearly with their business strategy. How do you use those trends when you are advising clients on their strategies?
Well, depending on my role with the client, whether I'm advising them on women's engagement with their own internal staff, or whether I'm talking about the values that those clients represent to the outside world, I think it's very important. I can refer to jigsaw puzzle before about being very clear. What are the client's needs? Who are they wanting to communicate with? Who do they want to build their relationships with? Be it for staff, be it for the people, the consumer, be it for B2B, and advising using the trends that I'm aware of that are going to be happening or are indeed happening now to create not only the message, as I've always said to my clients, don't create a message that is not congruent with what is actually the um, the philosophy and strategy of the business. So it's bringing into alignment the business strategy and the message it goes out, and how you work with your own staff in terms of diversity, in terms of green awareness, all the things that I've been talking about for years and are now so, so important. We've seen with Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, with the green environmentalist movement, before even the COVID pandemic situation, how young people and people of all ages, in truth, were feeling about the way they wanted to work, the way they wanted to live, they wanted to buy. And that has got stronger and stronger. And now what I call the great pause has allowed us to say, okay, we can recreate, we can make it different. And we need the support and the partnership of society, business, educationalists, environmentalists. We need to all come together in what I've written about before as a cooperative society. How do we work together? How do we create this change together?
I love that, the great pause. What a great, it really is, this moment in history is the great pause. I hope that is used by everybody because I think it describes it brilliantly. So is that how you see things changing post-pandemic then? Do you see that coming together, happening?
I think it's absolutely essential. I think we're going to obviously have a huge shift in our economy. So, how we're going to buy, how we're going to be in community, how we're going to sell, how we're going to make, all of that has got to be very, as I said earlier, congruent with what's going on in people's hearts. I think that local communities are going to be far more in control of their own lives. We're already seeing um, towns, villages, even cities growing their own vegetables. Young people in my little town in Somerset, in Wincanton, we're working with children, showing them how they can learn how to grow their own vegetables that they're going to eat, how we're going to live a healthier life, how we build up our immunity systems. I mean, this real global tragedy has given us the opportunity, within all the disasters of it, to create this change, which is in some ways going back to kind of the very ancient ways of people being more tribal, of living together in community, working together. The way the economy is going to be looking is very, very different. We're already hearing phrases like the circular economy, the green economy, even the love economy, where there will be in uh, business and in all kinds of life, this give back or give to each other, barter, or making sure that within production, manufacturing, retailing, that the environment, the local environment as well as the global environment, take a much bigger priority. The way we do packaging, understanding about the importance of not putting plastic in our oceans. And we are killing the animals and the fish that we are then eating in a way which is very unhealthy for not only them, but for us too. There is so much more awareness now of living a healthier life and how that can still result in good business. I think the real key is the word good business. It's not about just the bottom line. We've talked for many years, and I've been part of that conversation on the double bottom line, then the triple bottom line. But the reality is that it's about the whole. It's about a much more circular system, I think, as well, in terms of bottom line and profit, but also in terms of management. I've seen for a long time this kind of more holistic way of doing business, less of the linear from up to down, but far more of the circular, everybody having their input into how to, everybody, not everybody, but people that are relevant being heard and listened to as part of the growth of a business. And I think that that's going to get more and more important. When I say listen to, that is the consumer, that is the customer, but it is the people in the workplace. I remember Tom Peters, the great business guru, 30 years ago, talking about listen to everybody in your workplace. And I think that's absolutely true. So many, many aspects of how we're going to be living and working within this new future. And I think it's a very exciting time with all the problems that are coming up. Regardless, I think it is the opportunity for the door to open into a new future that everybody, whether you're running a business or whether you're a housewife looking after your children or whether you're an entrepreneur working from home, it is how we want to live. And we've got that opportunity now, which is great. Very, very exciting.
It's super exciting, and you talk about it so passionately. It's wonderful,
Yeah.
and you're also incredibly passionate about women, and that's been throughout your entire career, which we know. Do you see women's roles changing as well? In leadership, in business, in community.
Well, I think that without question, in community, these communities, these networks of communities, where there will be opportunities for women to take leadership roles, whether it's rewilding the local area. We've seen up north in the UK, in Todmington, the whole incredible edibles project that started with women in the community quite a few years ago now, which has inspired communities all over the world to start growing their own food and taking public land back to grow on. We see organizations like Tree Sisters, which have become a global, very powerful organization, literally planting millions and millions of trees where they need to be to help the environment. That's just taken off in the last 4 or 5 years. One woman's dream. Claire Dubois, who happens to be a friend of mine, English woman who lives in America, her dream with Tree Sisters, and now there are millions of trees have been brought to life because of that dream. So women are moving into a much more powerful role, but we still have a long way to go, and particularly in the corporate world, in government, in media. And it's not only women, of course, it's diversity generally, whether it be people of color, whether it be disabled. I mean, we have to create this new world which is equal for all and opportunities for all, and there is sufficiency for all. But without question, I see women's leadership being a major part of this new change in business and in community.
Fantastic. And you're right, there is a long way to go. I think we've come a long way, but there's still such a long way to go. And also, there's a long way to go for female speakers, women speakers, not enough women speakers out there. So I'm very happy to be talking to you. Now, tell me, would you say there's a feminine way of doing business?
Well, that was the brand I put on my book when I wrote the SEED Handbook 20 years ago, which was the first women's business book ever that was talked to women all over the world. Actually, it's come out in many, many languages: Russian, German, Japanese, about how to create your own sustainable business that reflects your values. The feminine way to do business was how I tagged it. I do think there is a more feminine way of doing business, but that is not exclusive to women. It is, if you like, the soft power that is referred to in the boardroom these days. That relationship building, using your intuition, um, not working in too linear a style, as I said earlier, being open to change and to supporting each other. These are all part of what I, at that point, called the feminine way to do business. And it is very much about values. It is about integrity. And I mean, we go all the way through from integrity, creativity, purpose, right the way through to love. I do think love is a word which perhaps is not used and traditionally hasn't been used very much in the business world. But whatever that represents to the individual, that is part of what we should be sharing. Compassion, empathy. Empathy is a big one. You know, this is why so often the head of HRs have invariably been women, because they listen and they can feel and they respond and they can hold the space for others. But those different, very powerful gifts that are thought of as feminine are in all of us, and have been proved by a number of uh, pieces of research done over the years to help the bottom line. It's not just about being good people and doing good business. It actually does help and support the bottom line by listening, to your customer, by listening to your staff.
It's interesting because I'm going to ask you exactly that question, because of course the resistance always of any change for businesses, you know, how is it going to impact the bottom line? And the fact that you're saying it does impact the bottom line positively is going to help you know, embrace these feminine traits, as you say. One of the things that you're also passionate about is creating trust, and specifically creating trust with stakeholders. Can you give us any advice or any insights into how we can do that?
Yes, I think I kind of referred to it in a way, which is like, having come from the world of PR and the world of spin, if you like, and I personally always stayed in the space of integrity, because I never felt comfortable creating some kind of spin that wasn't based on reality. People are not foolish. They know when they're being lied to. They know when they are seeing spin, even more now than ever. And they want integrity from the companies they buy from the brands they buy from the companies they work with. And that's women and men. But when we think that women are the predominant decision makers in all consumer purchases, they do not want to be made to feel less by the brands they are selling to. So that's very, very relevant in the worlds of beauty and fashion. And if we look back even in the 50s and 60s, well, of course, we're far too young for that, but if you look back in the 60s, you look at the classic American advertising, where you'd have a very beautifully made up, perfectly coiffed haired, dressed elegantly woman hoovering her sitting room floor and putting over the whole image of Superwoman. Did that make women feel better about themselves? Did they think, if I buy that Hoover, I'm going to be perfectly, elegantly hoovering, cleaning my house? No. And it's the same with beauty. And I think that some very clever brands have seen that, you know, it's about, women are not perfect either in their size or in their height or in their, you know, it's not perfect. It's nothing, it's not imperfect to be big or small. It is not imperfect to be old or young. It is the way we are. It is the reality. So I think when advertising and communications are being done in this day and age, it has got to stay real. And I've been talking that talk for many years now. And I've been saying that any company telling their story has got to come from a place of integrity, has got to come from a place of, again, partnership with who they're communicating with. And CSR, I was talking about CSR before it was called CSR. I mean, it was, you know, I would be making speeches to business groups and industry groups about the importance of responsibility in business and non-exploitation and telling the truth. And there were times, and I am talking 20 years ago, when people would look with me in confusion and disbelief. You know, people from representatives from large companies, owners of large companies. Thank goodness that has come on to the point where I think every company is very well aware that there is a triple and even a quadruple bottom line. But do not do greenwash. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You know, that's another thing. It got very fashionable to say, well, we give our money to this project, or we do this for the arts, or we do that. It's got to come from the true values of the business in every possible way, from manufacturing, from staff, from how you work with your customers. That those values are absolutely essential for any business, big or small, to take into consideration and make the heart of their decision making.
Absolutely, it was such a strong statement, really, really valuable. And actually, I remember 20 years ago when we were trying to get organisations to listen to the message that you were sharing, because we go back a long time. And yeah, you're right, they just, didn't want to hear it. And you are right, you've always been ahead of your time, which is both good and bad, because it's
Yes.
hard, isn't it? It's hard. You have to educate. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I hope you can answer it. I hope there are examples. Are there examples of any brands or organisations getting it right?
Well, we've had a situation over the last few years of many brands that started as socially responsible businesses, then selling to large organizations and saying, whether it be the late great Danita Roddick when she sold Body Shop, I can't remember who she sold it to, but anyway, they then resold it on and now it belongs to a Brazilian company. But she said they've agreed to take on, it was a big French
It was
company.
L'Oreal, I
It
think,
was
wasn't it?
L'Oreal, wasn't it? And they take on their values. And when Ben and Jerry sold to Unilever, it was like, oh, but Unilever, who are actually I do think Unilever have got fantastic values and really do try. For a big multinational, it's very hard, but I really do think they try within the limits of what they can do, bearing in mind a lot of their products have got chemicals in and are not helping necessarily the planet. But they do a lot of good work. So Ben and Jerry always said that. And then we've seen green and black chocolates who have ended up belonging to Kellogg's, I think, from Cadbury's in the United States. So, there've been some great brands and founders who are friends of mine who have said, we want our brands to carry on with the values that they started with, and to an extent they have, but it's a tough one. So if I had to say, yeah, there are companies that do good things. I think L'Oreal have done some really good things. They do a lot to encourage young women scientists. They've got a big campaign they do every year in France anyway, and Cartier do a huge global program to encourage women entrepreneurs from countries all over the world. I know because I was a judge on that, and that encouraged lots of young women with fantastic ideas in Africa and Asia to have the opportunity to promote their businesses and have exposure. So there are good projects done, without question. But I think we need to do more. We need to do more. And I think particularly when you look at companies in perhaps the oil business, of course that's changing as well, but in the energy business, we can see that as different kind of energy comes through, much more renewable energy, they come with a policy to help the planet, because that's why they've been created in the first place. So green business tends to come with its own values, because that's the sort of business they are. And it's about the old businesses that have been going for many years who need to catch up and change the way they do things, really.
It's such a long way to go. You're absolutely right. Such a long way to go. Yeah. So you touched on this earlier about cross-generational, cross-culture, diversity, etc. What about creating more cross-generational mentoring in organisations? Is there anything that we can be doing?
Well, I think that's exactly what we should be doing in organizations and in society itself, because at the moment we still have younger people coming into management and taking on roles, and people of a certain age, say 55 plus, certainly women particularly, tend not to have stayed in their traditional roles in those companies, but are still accessible and available with a huge amount of knowledge and wisdom and experience. So I think bringing together the people who have done those roles and who have learned by their experiences together with young people. I feel there's so much in common these days, if you like, with the millennials and the baby boomers, if you want to put it into those categories, or however you want to do it. Young people and even younger teenagers who have come into the world and are going into their careers with huge amounts of values, which very much resonate with the sort of 50 plus, 55 plus, which is about caring for the environment, caring for each other. And so I think there's a huge amount, and we can learn from young people so much. I mean, look at Greta Thunberg and others, these young Malala, these young women and young men who have got so much to teach us. So I think the more we can work together, the better, in society and in business. But yes, let's not forget the incredible bank of wisdom and experience that exists in 50 plus and others who can help the younger
Us really, us 50 plus. Yeah. So listen, Lynne, I could talk to you all day. We've come to the end. It's gone so fast. You've been incredibly optimistic and positive all the way through, and so this is going to be very easy for you to do. to leave our audience with one final optimistic thought?
Well, the world that we can move into now is the world we can create. I truly believe that if we vision the world that we want to live in, and we want our children to live in, and our grandchildren, I have 7 grandchildren, I want my grandchildren to grow up in a world where there is sufficiency for all, where we can make sure and ensure that everywhere in the world, children are getting education, the girl child is getting education, that there is awareness of what we can do to nurture our environment and nurture our communities. There's so much we can do. So I think all of us, and I do it all the time, get a big blank piece of paper and start putting an image down of how we want that world to look, or do it on our computer, or do it in our minds, or whatever it may be. Find that moment of peace inside to say, I would like the future to look like this. And if enough of us really can envisage the way we want it to look, that is indeed how it will be. I feel very positive that we can create something better than what we can see right now.
That's wonderful. Lynne, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.